Hello and welcome to This Really Happened, a place where unbelievable, heart-touching true stories come to life. Sometimes surprising, sometimes bittersweet, always real. Grab a drink and settle in. We're about to begin. Eleanor lived for her son David. He was the light of her life, her pride and joy. Towards her daughter Clara, who was independent and self-sufficient, she was indifferent, feeling no anxiety about her future. All her motherly love and care, sometimes suffocating, went to David. Although David grew into a successful young man, his mother saw him differently, helpless without her constant control and support. This was a profound misconception, but no arguments could shake her conviction. David tried to break free from the overprotectiveness, but in vain, and eventually resigned himself, learning to navigate this sea of care, which, though sometimes hindering, was an inevitable part of his life. The real difficulties began when David decided to get married. Sarah was already the third girl he had built a serious relationship with, and the previous two couldn't withstand the pressure of the caring mother-in-law, preferring to break up. Sarah turned out to be surprisingly patient, knowing in advance about Eleanor's difficult character and that they would have to live under the same roof. She understood that you don't choose your parents and was ready to make an effort to build a good relationship. Sarah saw in the mother a woman who had given life to the man she loved, and for the sake of that love, she was ready to endure a lot. However, she didn't yet imagine how sophisticated Eleanor's nitpicking could be. The first meeting was scheduled for Saturday, and the mother-in-law was not supposed to know about the proposal. Sarah was nervous, realizing that her future with David was at stake. She prepared meticulously, finding out from her fiancé about Eleanor's preferences, and despite her readiness, she felt a strong anxiety. Sarah baked the mother-in-law's favorite honey cake, chose an outfit, and waited for David. He arrived with a bouquet, picked her up, and they went to the house that was to become theirs. Meanwhile, Eleanor was also preparing, having already set herself up skeptically. Without even seeing the girl, she already knew she wouldn't like her. The mother was sure that no one could ever love her son as much and as rightly as she did. She met them in the hallway, dressed up and with light makeup, looking quite benevolent. But Sarah immediately felt a chill emanating from her, a clear sense of dislike. For the first time in her life, she felt so acutely that she was not welcome, but Sarah didn't give up, ready to fight for her happiness. During dinner, Eleanor asked routine questions about her parents, education, work, and housing. Sarah answered calmly and confidently. She had reason to be proud: a good family, prestigious education, a successful career as a doctor. Eleanor was impressed. The previous candidates were much simpler. Sarah, however, was from a respectable family, had a medical education, and worked as a gastroenterologist in a private clinic. If she weren't vying for the role of her son's wife, Eleanor might have even praised her. The dinner passed without major incident. David drove Sarah home and returned, knowing that a difficult conversation with his mother awaited him. She was sitting in the living room, and from her tense appearance, it was clear that Sarah had somehow still displeased her. David prepared to defend his choice. He decided to go on the offensive immediately. "Mum, what is it again? What didn't Sarah do right?" Eleanor pretended to be surprised. "Why did you decide she didn't please me? Quite a nice girl, educated, cultured, pleasant to talk to, but—" David interrupted. "But there's always a but, isn't there?" His mother nodded. "Yes, if it weren't for one but. I think she's boring." This criticism was so absurd that David involuntarily laughed. "Mom, are you serious? Boring? Why do you think so? Eleanor shrugged. I don't know, it just seemed that way to me. It was obvious that she simply hadn't found another reason for dissatisfaction. His mother continued, How will you live with her? Have you thought about that? David went up to her, took her hands. I'll live perfectly well with her, Mom. Stop looking for a black cat in a dark room, especially if it's not there. Sarah is a very good girl, calm, well-mannered, cultured. Exactly the kind you dreamed of for me, Mom, he persuaded her. Listen, I'm 32. I want a family and children. How much longer am I supposed to keep choosing? Eleanor understood that her son was right, but she didn't want to share him with anyone. Even the thought of grandchildren didn't warm her heart, because besides her son, she needed no one. You're right, son. It's time for you to get married, she began her usual tune. It just seems to me that you're still a little boy who needs his mother and her care more than anything in the world, but you've grown up, and your mother is no longer needed. Mum, don't be silly. I always need you, and will live with you. I'm not going anywhere, David reassured her. We'll still talk, have dinner together, go shopping, go to the dasha. It's just that one more person will live in our house, and in time, maybe more than one. He looked at her hopefully. It's much more fun that way, and you won't be alone when I go on business trips, he added. Eleanor couldn't withstand his gaze. She had never been able to refuse her favourite. All right, get married. I won't interfere. Mum, I knew you were the wisest woman in the world, David exclaimed, hugging and kissing her. 2 months later, Sarah and David got married, and Sarah moved into her husband's house. The first few weeks went surprisingly smoothly. Sarah couldn't believe her luck. Eleanor was benevolent, chatted nicely with her daughter-in-law, and even helped her. But as soon as David left for a week-long business trip, everything changed. Complaints started pouring in. You're not ironing David's shirts properly. You didn't put enough salt in the soup. You put too much salt in the porridge. You put the cups in the wrong place. Even David's armchair was off limits. Complaints poured in like a horn of plenty, and Sarah couldn't understand how a person could change so much overnight. She silently endured, re-ironed, rearranged, and corrected all her mistakes. The real nightmare began with the appearance of a kitten. David said they had always had cats, and Sarah thought the fluffy little one would liven up the atmosphere. She discussed the purchase with her husband, and he approved the idea. But Eleanor had a different opinion. Why did you bring this flea-ridden thing into the house? Do you know I can't stand cat hair? You're doing this to spite me. And that's when Sarah couldn't take it anymore. Dear Eleanor, what are you trying to achieve? For David and me to get divorced? Well, that's not going to happen. We love each other. I discussed getting the kitten with your son, and he assured me that you always had cats in the house and that you would surely like the idea, Sarah said calmly but firmly. But it turns out that even this you are ready to deny just because I brought the kitten. She paused. The only thing you will achieve with this attitude towards me is that we will move into a rented apartment and you will be left alone, Sarah continued. Does that option suit you? I don't think so. So either we live together peacefully or we leave. You can forget about us breaking up. Then, looking her mother-in-law directly in the eyes, she added, I'm expecting a baby. Eleanor looked at her daughter-in-law with completely different eyes. So, you have a character after all, girl, she thought. Want to fight with me? Well, well. Aloud, however, she said something entirely different. I don't want you to move somewhere else. Maybe I really am nitpicking a bit, but you must understand me. I'm a mother. I want my son to be happy. And you think I came into his life to ruin it? Have I given you any reason to think so badly of me?" "No," Sarah replied. Eleanor turned to leave, but then turned back to her daughter-in-law. "All right, let's live peacefully, especially since you shouldn't be getting upset." After this conversation, Eleanor truly changed her behaviour. She stopped looking for reasons to nitpick, tried to spend more time in her room, and interacted less with her daughter-in-law. Sarah noticed that the kitten, whom she had named Jasper, became a frequent visitor in the mother-in-law's room, and she held him even more often than Sarah herself did. Life under one roof gradually improved. 2 years passed. Sarah and David had a son named Edward after his grandfather. Eleanor warmly remembered her husband, who had died in the line of duty and whom David barely remembered. Eddie grew up, and his grandmother happily played with him and took him for walks while Sarah did household chores. The mother-in-law's attitude towards her daughter-in-law, although still cool, was now expressed silently. David worked a lot, often went on business trips, and their life flowed calmly and measuredly. But, as often happens, unforeseen circumstances burst into this quiet harbour. David had to go abroad for a month, and Sarah really didn't want him to leave, but there was no choice. A couple of days after he left, Sarah noticed that Eleanor was acting strangely. She was silent, not playing with her grandson. Gathering her courage, Sarah decided to talk to her mother-in-law. "Eleanor, is something bothering you?" Sarah asked uncertainly. "Maybe something hurts. Tell me. I'm a doctor." "Nothing hurts. Everything is fine," the mother-in-law replied calmly, but Sarah didn't believe her and decided to observe. The next day, she accidentally overheard her mother-in-law's phone conversation, where she was asking someone for help. Sarah didn't understand the details, but she clearly heard the words, "I need your support." Eleanor was sociable, but she could only ask for help from those closest to her. Sarah called David. "Dave, you need to talk to Mom urgently. Something's going on with her and she's not telling me anything," she reported anxiously. "I heard her asking someone for help. Talk to her. Maybe it's something with her health. I can help." "Okay, dear Sarah, I'll definitely talk to her today," David promised. "And generally, how are things with you?" Sarah replied that things were generally fine, but Mom wasn't herself, and it worried her. David understood her anxiety and promised to call back after talking to his mother. In the evening, David called and said that Mom's test results were bad. The doctor at the local clinic was insisting on urgent surgery, and Eleanor was afraid. "Dear Sarah, try talking to her again. I asked Mom to show you the test results, and she seemed to agree. But show her care and attention. You know how she is. For my sake, of course," he added. Sarah assured him, "Dave, I'm worried about her myself. I'll do everything I can." She resolutely entered her mother-in-law's room. "Eleanor, I understand that you dislike me and think I'm a bad daughter-in-law, but please let me help you anyway." And then something unexpected happened. Eleanor wept bitterly, which greatly frightened Sarah. "Eleanor, what is it? Is it that bad? Cancer?" Through tears, the mother-in-law replied, "No, it's just that I turned to my daughter. She doesn't have time to go to hospitals with me. But that's understandable. I always only focused on David. She has every right to be offended with me," the mother-in-law continued. "My sister is also busy with her own affairs and problems. My close friend is at her Dhaka. She won't come to the city for my sake. She says, 'You have children.' And so it turns out that no one cares about me, and I'm scared, you understand? Very scared." "All right, let's calm down. You'll tell me everything in detail," Sarah said. Eleanor showed her the test results. explaining that the doctor was insisting on urgent surgery, saying that time had been lost and it was unknown how everything would end. Sarah carefully studied the results and looked at her mother-in-law in surprise. "Which clinic were you at? Our local one?" Sarah asked. "I don't see anything terrible, let alone irreparable, in your test results. I'll call my gynecologist right now and we'll go for a consultation tomorrow. I'm sure this is some kind of mistake." "Really?" the mother-in-law asked with hope in her eyes. "Really," Sarah replied firmly. The next day, Sarah and Eleanor went to the medical centre where Sarah worked, to her acquaintance, a gynecologist. The doctor listened to the complaints, studied the test results, and was extremely surprised by the recommendation for urgent surgery from his colleague at the local clinic. "Eleanor, I assure you, you have no indications for surgery. I will prescribe you treatment, you'll undergo it, and everything will be fine," the doctor reassured her. Eleanor cried again, but this time from relief. Upon leaving the office, the doctor turned to Sarah. "Sarah, can you go see that specialist yourself? Let her explain why she frightened your mother-in-law. You can't scare people like that." "Don't worry, Andrew, I'll sort it out," Sarah replied. When they left the centre, Eleanor stopped, took Sarah's hand, and said, "Dear Sarah, please forgive me. I was very unhappy. I nitpicked at you for no reason at all. I was wrong about you." She started crying again. And you turned out to be the only person who came to my aid. Because if I had gone to the doctor with someone else, they would have sent me for surgery. No one would have looked into it," she continued. "Thank you, my girl. Thank you very much. I promise you I will be the most loving mother-in-law in the world." Sarah also cried, not expecting such words. "It's all right, Eleanor," she said. "We are one family, and we should help and support each other." The mother-in-law smiled sadly. "In life, it's often the opposite. Strangers support and help, while your own are too busy." "Well, then we're the exception to the rule," Sarah smiled. "Let's go home. Eddie is waiting for us there with my mum." Suddenly, Eleanor stopped abruptly and looked at her daughter-in-law. "Now you listen to me and don't interrupt," she said with new determination. "I want to thank you, so that you see, not just in words but in deed, that I have changed. I will transfer my share of the apartment to you, so that you and David are always on equal footing. That will be fair." "But," Sarah tried to object. "Now don't argue with me," the mother-in-law said playfully but sternly. "On this matter, I will be categorical, strict, as a mother-in-law should be." She smiled and hugged her daughter-in-law tightly.